Imagine the hot desert wind blowing against your face, the sun setting low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain. In the distance, two brothers stand face to face after years of estrangement, tension thick in the air. One, a rugged, red-haired hunter, worn from years of conflict and bitterness. The other, a smaller, more cunning figure, bracing for the worst. But instead of drawing weapons, something entirely unexpected happens. The older brother, Esau, once consumed by a thirst for revenge, opens his arms wide and embraces his brother Jacob. Tears fall from their eyes, washing away the years of betrayal. This powerful moment of forgiveness seems unimaginable, especially for a man who had been destined for strife even before birth. But it's here, in this act of grace, that we uncover one of the Bible's most profound truths. God's plans can transcend even the deepest wounds, and forgiveness can be the key to unlocking freedom, no matter how painful the past. How does a man, hated by God before he was born, find his way to such a moment of grace? And what does his story have to teach us about our own lives today? Esau's story begins even before he was born. In Genesis 25 verse 23, God told Rebekah, Esau's mother, that she was carrying two nations in her womb. This prophecy wasn't just a description of her pregnancy. It foreshadowed the fate of her sons. The older Esau would serve the younger Jacob. This was no small detail. It set the stage for a rivalry that would define both their lives. Imagine hearing that your children's destiny had already been written before they even took their first breath. The weight of that revelation must have been heavy. From the moment of their birth, the differences between Esau and Jacob were striking. Esau came out first, covered in red hair, giving him a wild, rugged appearance. Jacob, however, followed close behind, grasping Esau's heel. This image of Esau as the strong, primal man and Jacob as the cunning follower would only grow with time. Esau's nature was one of action and instinct, while Jacob's was marked by strategy and foresight. Their mother, Rebekah, surely saw these traits and likely wondered how the prophecy would unfold. Esau grew up to become a skillful hunter, a man of the field. His physical prowess was clear, and he thrived in the open spaces where he could rely on his instincts. This brought him closer to his father, Isaac, who favored him because of the game he brought home. Yet, in the backdrop of this father-son bond, the prophecy lingered. Esau, the firstborn, was destined to serve the younger. Despite all his physical strength and skill, his fate seemed sealed by forces beyond his control. The tension between Esau's physicality and his destiny as the lesser of the two brothers adds a layer of complexity to his character. On one hand, he was the rugged outdoorsman who seemed destined to succeed in a worldly sense. On the other, the divine plan set him on a path of submission, even before he had the chance to prove himself. This contrast would define Esau's life in unexpected ways. His story challenges our understanding of strength and destiny. One might wonder if Esau ever sensed the spiritual weight placed upon him. Growing up, he likely noticed his parents' divided affections, Isaac's love for him and Rebekah's preference for Jacob. This dynamic surely shaped the brothers' relationship, though Esau may not have grasped the full extent of the prophecy. After all, how could someone so strong, so capable, be destined to serve another? Perhaps the quiet seeds of resentment were already being sown. And yet, as life would soon show, physical strength and natural ability are not the final word on a person's fate. Esau's journey, beginning with his birth and the prophecy, would take many twists and turns. His choices, some made in haste, would eventually bring him face to face with his preordained role. But that, of course, is a story that continues to unfold, just as his rivalry with Jacob was only beginning to take shape. Even before they were born, Esau and Jacob's relationship was marked by conflict. The Bible tells us in Genesis 25 verse 22 that the twins struggled together within Rebekah, leading her to inquire of the Lord about what was happening. The response was startling. "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided." From the very beginning, their lives were intertwined with tension and competition. This internal struggle foreshadowed a rivalry that would last a lifetime. As they grew, their personalities only deepened the divide. Esau, the older twin, was a man of action. He thrived in the outdoors, hunting, and living by the strength of his hands. Jacob, on the other hand, was quieter, more introspective, and preferred the domestic life. It's easy to see how their differences would naturally lead to friction. Imagine two brothers, one rugged and impulsive, the other calculated and calm. They were bound by blood but destined to conflict by nature. This tension between Esau and Jacob wasn't just about personality. It reflected deeper, spiritual realities. Esau represented the physical world. He was driven by hunger, desire, and immediate gratification. Jacob, in contrast, embodied the spiritual, the future-oriented thinker who valued long-term blessings. Their rivalry can be seen as symbolic of the age-old battle between the flesh and the spirit. It's a theme that echoes throughout the Bible, showing the tension between worldly pursuits and divine purpose. One pivotal moment that defined their relationship was when Esau, returning famished from the field, sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. This moment is often used as a metaphor for giving up something eternal for something fleeting. Esau's impulsiveness led him to devalue what was most important, his inheritance as the firstborn. Jacob, ever the strategist, seized the opportunity. But this moment wasn't just about a transaction. It was the beginning of a deeper divide between the brothers. Esau's decision to trade his birthright for temporary satisfaction would haunt him later, but at that moment, he likely saw it as a minor exchange. After all, what good is a birthright if you're starving? It's a question that resonates even today. How often do we trade long-term blessings for short-term comfort? Esau's hunger made him short-sighted, a characteristic that would define much of his life. This rivalry, born in the womb and exacerbated by their differences, was far from over. As Esau and Jacob continued to grow, so did their conflict. The battle for blessings, favor, and inheritance was only beginning, and their story was about to take a dramatic turn, with consequences that neither brother could fully foresee. The infamous moment when Esau sold his birthright to Jacob is one of the most significant turning points in his story. After returning from a long day of hunting, exhausted and famished, Esau found Jacob cooking a pot of stew. Desperate for food, Esau begged for a portion, but Jacob saw an opportunity. "Sell me your birthright," Jacob said. Esau, overwhelmed by hunger, agreed. In that moment, Esau exchanged something of immense spiritual value for a temporary physical need. This decision is often viewed as the epitome of short-sightedness. The birthright represented not only a double portion of inheritance but also spiritual leadership of the family. Esau, however, saw it only as an abstract future promise, something less tangible than the hunger gnawing at him. It's easy to criticize Esau for his impulsiveness, but how many times do we make similar decisions in our own lives? Trading long-term rewards for immediate gratification is a common human mistake. Jacob, ever the planner, seized this moment. He wasn't just after material wealth. He understood the spiritual significance of the birthright. This exchange highlighted the brothers' contrasting perspectives. Esau lived for the moment, driven by physical desires, while Jacob was focused on future blessings. The stew itself became a symbol of Esau's impulsiveness, a reminder that temporary satisfaction often comes at a steep price. Esau's decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. What makes this story so impactful is the sheer finality of the transaction. Once Esau gave up his birthright, there was no going back. He had secured his immediate comfort but lost something far greater. The Bible makes it clear that Esau despised his birthright, Genesis 25 verse 34, suggesting that he didn't fully grasp its significance until much later. This act of disregard set the stage for the bitterness and regret that would follow Esau throughout his life. Esau's story serves as a cautionary tale for all of us. It's easy to give in to the pressures of the moment, to focus on immediate needs instead of the bigger picture. Whether it's career choices, relationships, or spiritual decisions, the temptation to trade long-term blessings for short-term gains is always present. Esau's choice reflects the human tendency to undervalue what is most important when we're consumed by our desires. As Esau continued to live his life, this one decision would become a shadow over his future. The loss of the birthright was just the beginning of a series of events that would further fracture the relationship between the two brothers. Esau's impulsiveness, combined with Jacob's cunning, would soon lead to an even more devastating loss for Esau, one that would test the very core of their family dynamics. The tension between Esau and Jacob reached its peak when Isaac, their father, was nearing the end of his life. According to tradition, Isaac planned to bestow his final blessing upon Esau, the firstborn. This blessing was more than just words. It was a powerful affirmation of leadership, prosperity, and divine favor. Esau, eager to receive this blessing, went out to hunt game for his father, just as Isaac had requested. However, Jacob and his mother, Rebekah, had other plans. Rebekah, knowing the prophecy that the older would serve the younger, conspired with Jacob to deceive Isaac. She instructed Jacob to disguise himself as Esau by wearing his brother's clothes and covering his arms with goat skins to mimic Esau's hairy skin. Jacob, though hesitant at first, went along with the plan, and it worked. Isaac, whose eyesight had failed him, was fooled by Jacob's disguise and gave him the blessing meant for Esau. This act of deception would forever alter the course of their family. When Esau returned from the hunt and discovered what had happened, his grief was overwhelming. The Bible describes Esau as crying out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, Genesis 27 verse 34, begging his father for another blessing. But Isaac's blessing, once given, could not be revoked. Esau was left with a lesser blessing, one that promised him a life of hardship and servitude under his brother. This moment marked the breaking point in Esau's relationship with Jacob. Esau's anguish over losing the blessing was not just about material loss. It symbolized the culmination of his regret over previous decisions, including the sale of his birthright. The blessing represented not only future wealth but also spiritual authority and the favor of God. Losing it to Jacob reinforced the reality of the prophecy Rebekah had received years earlier, that the older would serve the younger. Esau's fate seemed sealed, and his resentment toward Jacob grew into a desire for revenge. This betrayal cut deep, and Esau vowed to kill Jacob once their father passed away. The sibling rivalry, which had begun in the womb, had now escalated into a full-blown feud with deadly intentions. Esau's raw emotion in this moment is palpable. He wasn't just angry, he was devastated. His entire future, as he had envisioned it, was ripped away in an instant by his brother's cunning and his own previous choices. Yet, despite Esau's desire for revenge, events were already in motion that would prevent immediate conflict. Rebekah, overhearing Esau's plans, urged Jacob to flee to her brother Laban's house until Esau's anger subsided. This temporary separation would set the stage for a long period of estrangement between the brothers. But the story of Esau and Jacob was far from over, and their eventual reunion would be filled with tension, forgiveness, and unexpected grace. Esau's reaction to being deceived was immediate and intense. After realizing that his father's blessing had been stolen by Jacob, his heart filled with rage and despair. The weight of the loss was more than just material. It was a spiritual blow that shattered his expectations of the future. As the firstborn, Esau had always assumed that the blessing would be his, a rightful inheritance. Now, he stood with nothing but bitterness and a growing desire for revenge. This was more than just sibling rivalry. It was the crumbling of his identity as the favored son. In Genesis 27 verse 41, it's written that Esau held a grudge against Jacob and vowed to kill him once their father, Isaac, had died. His anger was understandable. He had not only lost his birthright but now his blessing as well. The pain of being tricked by his own brother cut deep, and his reaction was fueled by a sense of betrayal that consumed him. Esau's thoughts turned dark, and he began to plot Jacob's death. This internal struggle between resentment and justice was a battle that raged within him. Yet, even in his anger, Esau had to contend with his father's frailty. Isaac, still alive, became the only thing standing between Jacob and Esau's wrath. Esau's decision to wait until Isaac passed away reveals the conflict within him. He respected his father enough to delay his revenge, but his hatred for Jacob simmered just beneath the surface. The tension between family loyalty and personal vendetta created a complex dynamic in Esau's heart. His desire for justice was real, but so was the love for his father. Esau's plan for revenge, however, was thwarted by his mother, Rebekah, who overheard his intentions. She quickly advised Jacob to flee to her brother Laban's house to avoid Esau's fury. This separation, while necessary, only deepened the wound. Esau was left to grapple with his emotions, watching as his brother fled with the blessing that should have been his. The years of estrangement that followed would give Esau time to reflect on the events, but his resentment toward Jacob lingered. Esau's reaction to the deception was not only about the blessing itself, but about the sense of injustice that had been building throughout his life. From the sale of his birthright to the loss of the blessing, Esau had experienced a series of losses that made him feel as though fate had conspired against him. His story speaks to the human experience of betrayal, where one moment of deception can change the course of a life. Esau's pursuit of revenge was a natural response, yet it also showed the danger of letting bitterness take root. But time has a way of softening even the hardest of hearts. While Esau's rage was real and justified, the years that followed would allow him to reconsider his relationship with Jacob. Though their paths diverged, the bond of family would eventually bring them back together. However, the reunion would not be without its challenges, and Esau's response to seeing Jacob again would be a moment filled with unexpected grace. As Jacob fled to avoid Esau's wrath, their lives took distinctly different paths. While Jacob set off to find refuge with his uncle Laban, Esau remained behind, navigating a life now marked by both personal and family conflict. During this time, Esau made choices that would further strain his relationship with his family, particularly with his parents. One of those decisions was his marriage to Canaanite women, a choice that deeply displeased both Isaac and Rebekah. In Genesis 26 verses 34 to 35, it's noted that Esau took 2 Hittite women as his wives, Judith and Basemath. These marriages were a point of contention because the Canaanites were seen as pagan and immoral, and their customs clashed with the values held by Isaac's household. Esau's decision to marry outside his people seemed to further distance him from his family, especially from his mother, Rebekah, who had hoped for a more spiritually aligned match for her son. Esau's choice of wives can be interpreted as a reflection of his growing bitterness. Feeling alienated after losing both his birthright and his blessing, Esau may have chosen these marriages as a form of rebellion or simply out of neglect for the family's traditions. It's as if, in the wake of his disappointment, Esau decided to forge his own path, one that didn't align with the expectations placed upon him. This decision would only deepen the divide between Esau and his parents. The tension caused by Esau's marriages didn't go unnoticed by his family. Isaac and Rebekah's displeasure was clear, and this added yet another layer of complexity to Esau's already strained relationship with them. The disapproval wasn't just about cultural differences. It represented a deeper spiritual discord. Esau's actions showed a growing divide not only between him and Jacob, but also between him and the spiritual inheritance that had been passed down from Abraham. Interestingly, Esau's decision to marry Canaanite women contrasted sharply with Jacob's journey to find a wife among his own people. While Jacob was sent to Laban's house to find a bride, ensuring that the family's spiritual lineage would be maintained, Esau's choices seemed to further remove him from that legacy. The contrast between the brothers' paths highlights their different approaches to life and the importance they placed on their spiritual heritage. Despite these choices, Esau's life was not without its blessings. Though he had married outside the family's traditions, he still became the father of a great nation. His descendants, known as the Edomites, would later play a significant role in the region. However, the rift caused by these early decisions remained, and the consequences of Esau's actions would continue to echo through the generations. Yet, even with the tension between him and his family, Esau's story was not over, and his next encounter with Jacob would prove to be a pivotal moment. Years passed as Jacob built his life with Laban, accumulating wealth, wives, and children. Meanwhile, Esau's life continued in the land of Edom. However, the day eventually came when Jacob had to face his brother again. After fleeing for so long, Jacob knew that the time had come to return to his homeland, but he was filled with dread at the thought of encountering Esau. The last time they had seen each other, Esau had vowed to kill him. Would time have healed Esau's anger, or would Jacob be met with revenge? As Jacob approached the land where Esau now lived, his fear grew. In preparation for their meeting, Jacob sent messengers ahead with gifts, flocks and herds, to appease Esau. He hoped to soften his brother's heart by offering these signs of goodwill. Jacob even divided his family into groups, prepared for the worst, fearing that Esau might attack them. Genesis 32 verse 11 captures Jacob's anxiety when he prayed, "Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I fear him." The day of their reunion arrived, and Jacob braced himself for a potentially hostile encounter. But to his surprise, Esau's reaction was not one of anger or vengeance. Instead, when Esau saw Jacob, he ran to meet him, embraced him, and wept. In Genesis 33 verse 4, this moment of reconciliation is described as one of deep emotion. Esau had let go of the bitterness that had once consumed him, and what could have been a moment of conflict turned into a heartfelt reunion. This act of grace from Esau was unexpected and powerful. Esau's forgiveness of Jacob stands out as a moment of redemption in his story. Though he had every reason to hold on to his anger, Esau chose instead to extend mercy to his brother. This act of forgiveness not only mended their relationship, but also allowed both brothers to move forward without the weight of the past hanging over them. For Esau, it was a moment of closure, a chance to let go of the years of pain and betrayal. While Jacob had been filled with anxiety and guilt, Esau's actions showed that time, and perhaps divine intervention, had softened his heart. This reunion was not just about the two brothers. It was about healing family wounds that had festered for decades. Esau's ability to forgive reminds us that even the deepest grudges can be overcome with grace. His story serves as an example of how reconciliation can bring peace, even after years of estrangement. However, while this reunion marked a turning point in their relationship, it did not erase the past completely. Esau and Jacob would continue to lead separate lives, and the nations that descended from them would often find themselves at odds. But for this brief moment, the two brothers found peace, and their story offers a glimpse of the power of forgiveness, even in the face of betrayal. Esau's legacy is a complex one, marked by both his personal choices and how he was remembered in the scriptures. Although his story is intertwined with his brother Jacob, Esau forged his own path, becoming the father of the Edomites, a nation that would play a significant role in the history of the region. Despite the moments of reconciliation with Jacob, the descendants of Esau and Jacob would remain in conflict for generations. The relationship between the Israelites and the Edomites was often characterized by tension, reflecting the unresolved rivalry between the two brothers. In the Bible, Esau is sometimes portrayed in a negative light, especially in the New Testament. In Hebrews 12 verses 16 to 17, Esau is described as a profane person who, for a single meal, sold his birthright. This passage highlights Esau's impulsiveness and failure to value the spiritual inheritance he had been given. To the early Christian audience, Esau became a cautionary figure, representing those who prioritize earthly desires over spiritual blessings. His story is used as a warning against short-sightedness and the dangers of living for immediate gratification. Yet Esau was not entirely without merit. His ability to forgive Jacob during their reunion stands as a testament to his capacity for grace and reconciliation. While his decisions earlier in life were marked by impulsiveness, his willingness to let go of the past showed growth and maturity. Esau's story reminds us that even those who make mistakes can find redemption through forgiveness and humility. His legacy, while complicated, offers lessons about human frailty and the potential for change. The Edomites, Esau's descendants, played a notable role in the history of Israel. The two nations were often at odds, with the Edomites being both allies and adversaries of Israel at various points in history. Despite the animosity that sometimes existed between them, the two nations shared a common ancestry in Isaac. This shared heritage adds depth to the conflicts and alliances between them, highlighting the long-lasting effects of family dynamics on national identities. In Jewish tradition, Esau came to symbolize the forces of opposition to Israel. Over time, he was associated with Rome and other empires that would oppress the Jewish people. This interpretation adds another layer to his legacy. As Esau became more than just a historical figure, he became a symbol of resistance to God's chosen people. However, this symbolic interpretation doesn't fully capture the complexity of his life, which was marked by moments of both failure and redemption. Esau's legacy, though often overshadowed by Jacob's, remains significant in the biblical narrative. His story serves as a reminder that even those who fall short can find moments of grace. His life, with all its struggles and decisions, reflects the broader human experience of wrestling with identity, destiny, and the consequences of our choices. And while Esau may not have been the chosen one, his story is far from forgotten, offering lessons that resonate even today. Esau's journey is one that mirrors many of our own struggles, feeling wronged, betrayed, and perhaps even forgotten. But what stands out in his story is the transformative power of forgiveness. Now, what about you? How do you handle the pain of betrayal, the weight of past mistakes? Are you holding on to grudges, or are you willing to let go and find peace? Esau's story challenges us to take that bold step toward healing, no matter how long the hurt has lingered. It's not easy, but it's the only way to truly move forward. What can you do today to start that process in your own life? If Esau, who was deeply wronged, could find the strength to forgive, what's stopping you from doing the same? Remember, your future doesn't have to be defined by your past. You have the power to rewrite the next chapter of your life by choosing grace over bitterness. Before you go, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications. Together, we'll continue to explore the powerful lessons hidden in these ancient stories, and there's so much more to uncover that will speak directly to your life today. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for the story of Esau, a story that teaches us the power of forgiveness. Help us to let go of our bitterness and embrace the grace that you offer us. May we learn from Esau's journey and choose to forgive those who have wronged us, just as you have forgiven us. Guide us in healing our relationships and walking in peace. Amen.